You need to understand what happened out there on the Appalachian Trail before you ever sign your name in one of those shelter registers again. In April of 2015, deep inside the Appalachian Mountains along the Georgia-North Carolina border, a 17-year-old hiker named Cason Vrell set out no-bow from Springer Mountain. A self-described early graduate with 7 months, a brand-new Osprey pack, and a precise color-coded mileage spreadsheet he had built himself. He was not chasing some spiritual revelation. He just wanted to finish what he started. Everything was exactly on schedule until he reached a shelter register 6 days in and found 3 full handwritten pages from a hiker named Hatty. Pages that described a man who kept appearing on the trail ahead and behind him, always at distance, always stopped, always facing his direction. By the time Cason reached the Smokies, Hatty's entries had stopped being trail logs. They had become instructions, specific warnings, shelter numbers, times to avoid the privy after dark, and one line, underlined twice, that read, "If you are reading this and you are alone, you are not alone." Garrett Hatty Colby, 24 years old, last known location Peck's Corner Shelter, Great Smoky Mountains National Park. He was reported missing April 9th, 2015. No confirmed sighting north of that shelter has ever been recorded. What you are about to hear is the account. His name is Cason, and this happened to him in the Appalachian Mountains in April of 2015. April 3rd, 2015. Plum Orchard Gap Shelter, Chattahoochee-Oconee National Forest, Georgia. Cason Vrell was exactly 4.2 miles ahead of his own schedule. He had checked twice. His pack was a second-hand Osprey Atmos 65, faded green, bought off a guy in Marietta whose wife had made him sell it. There was a long diagonal scratch on the left hip belt, raw nylon showing through, where the previous owner caught it on a barbed wire fence. The guy told Cason this story unprompted. 3 times. The shelter was a 3-sided lean-to that smelled like pine resin, and 40 years of strangers sleeping against the same wood. A morning rain had stopped 2 hours ago but hadn't finished falling off the leaves. The hollow dripped in a slow rhythm, branch to leaf to ground. Up on the ridge, a pileated woodpecker knocked against a dead tree in long, hollow bursts. The canopy directly overhead was silent. No birds, no movement in the rhododendron crowding the approach trail. Just the dripping and the woodpecker and a quiet that felt, if you paid enough attention to it, a little too complete. Cason did not pay attention to it. He pulled the register off its nail and opened it to page 1. 31 entries, 2 weeks of hikers, most of them exactly what he expected. Great views, trail magic at the road crossing. Saw a black bear on the approach, totally worth it. Sundancer. He almost missed the one dated 6 days back. The handwriting was small and compressed, a backward-leaning script, like someone who learned to write fast under pressure. The hiker signed it Hatty. He described a man standing completely still in the tree line just south of Plum Orchard Gap, watching the trail. Hatty had written it off as nothing. Probably nothing, the entry read. It ended there, mid-sentence. The pen had dragged at the period like he'd been interrupted, or just stopped. Cason turned the page, made a small note of it the way he noted anything that didn't compute, then signed his own name. Cason Vrell, Nobo, Decatur, Georgia, Day 6. Outside, the woodpecker went quiet. 2 days later, April 5th, Trey Mountain Shelter, 22 miles north of Plum Orchard Gap. Cason signed in, dropped his pack against the back wall, and reached for the register. He was on pace. He had checked. The Trey Mountain Shelter sat at 4,400 feet, exposed enough that the wind moved through the eaves in a low, continuous tone. The wood here was older, darker, more compressed, the kind that has absorbed a lot of weather and given nothing back. The smell was different from Plum Orchard, something underneath the pine and the rain damp that he could not immediately classify. Faintly metallic. Organic in a way that suggested something had died nearby, weeks ago, and the soil had held onto it. His body registered it before his brain did. A small involuntary shift of weight on the bench, a tightening somewhere in his chest he could not fully name or account for. He opened the register. Hatty was in this one too. Same handwriting. Same backward-leaning compressed script, the letters pressed harder into the page than most people press. But before Cason read the Trey Mountain entry, something made him flip back through what he had only skimmed at Plum Orchard Gap. He had missed it. The entry wasn't 1 page, it was 3. Dated March 28th, 7 days before Cason had stood in that hollow, listening to a woodpecker knock against a dead tree. Hatty had been at Plum Orchard a full week ahead of him, and the entry was not a trail log, it was a record. Starting on day 3 of his hike, Hatty had begun seeing a man on the trail, not approaching, not calling out, just present. 200 yards ahead on a long straight stretch, or visible through a gap in the trees on a switchback below. The man never closed distance, never fell behind. Hatty had named him the Pacer, not because it felt right, the entry said, but because naming a thing is how you keep from being afraid of it. By March 28th, Hatty had seen the Pacer 11 times. He was not alarmed, Hatty wrote, or he was trying not to be. Probably a section hiker running the same mileage as me. Probably. The word probably appeared 4 times across 3 pages. Cason counted. He turned back to the Trey Mountain entry. The handwriting here was different. Same backward lean, same compressed pressure, but the lines ran slightly downhill, bleeding toward the right margin as if written in low light or in a hurry. The content had changed too. The Pacer was still on the trail. But Hatty had noticed something new. The Pacer's pack is always the same color as whoever I'm walking with. Today I walked with a girl from Delaware named Trish. Yellow Duder. The Pacer's pack was yellow. Cason read the sentence again. Then again. Hatty did not theorize. He did not explain. He recorded it. The way you write down a temperature when there is nothing else you can do about a fever. The flatness of it was worse than if he'd been panicking. Cason looked up. His pack was leaning against the shelter wall 12 feet away. The second-hand Osprey Atmos 65. Faded green, dark at the straps, the color uneven enough in the flat afternoon light that it could read, depending on the angle, as almost gray, almost olive. He sat with that for a long moment, then picked up his pen, signed his name the way he always did. No trail name, no exclamation point, nothing that wasn't necessary. Cason Vrell, N-O-B-O, Decatur, Georgia, Day 8. What he did not write down, what he only registered later, when the shelter was behind him and he was back on trail, was the rhododendron tunnel on the approach to Trey Mountain, a 20-foot section where the branches overhead had been bent back toward the trail rather than away from it. The leaves folded inside out, like something had been standing in the tunnel facing outward, watching the approach. Cason had noted it as wind damage and kept walking. He was a precise person. He was not, at that point, afraid. That is the part worth paying attention to. April 8th, Peck's Corner Shelter, Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Elevation 5,280 feet. Cason had found Hatty's handwriting in 4 more registers between Trey Mountain and here. Each one shorter than the last, each one using more of the margins. He had started reading Hatty's entries first. The trail from the ridgeline to Peck's Corner ran exposed on both sides, and the April wind up here was not the gentle kind. It came in hard lateral gusts that hit the pack like a flat hand pressing on the shoulder, repeatedly from behind. The sensation was constant and could not be entirely separated from the sensation of being followed. Cason's shoulders had been tightening for the last 2 miles without his permission. When he finally ducked into the shelter and got out of the wind, his hands were cold in a way that had nothing to do with the temperature. The cold was in the palms, specifically, where the blood pulls back when the body has decided something before the brain catches up. He was 168 miles in. He was exactly on pace. He pulled the register off the nail. Hatty's entry at Peck's Corner was not a trail log. It was a list. Same handwriting, same backward lean, same compressed pressure, but structured differently. 6 items, numbered, each one a specific instruction. No preamble, no explanation, just the list, written the way you write something when you are not sure how much time you have left. 1. Do not stay at Tri-Corner Knob if you are alone. 2. The pacer moves faster after 4 p.m. Plan accordingly. 3. If you hear footsteps behind you on a descent and you stop and the footsteps also stop, that is not an echo. 4. He does not approach. He does not need to. 5. His pack changes color. He has done this the whole time. 6. If you are reading this and you are alone, you are not alone. Cason read the list once straight through, then went back to item 5. His pack changes color. He has done this the whole time. A pack does not change color. Therefore, Hatty was wrong, or the pacer was not one person. He sat with both options. Neither one closed cleanly. The wind hit the shelter eaves and moved on. The spruce trees on the ridge flexed and went still. In the quiet between gusts, the silence was total. No birds, no water, no movement in the undergrowth. The kind of silence that exists not because nothing is there, but because everything has gone still for the same reason at the same time. Cason's hands were still cold. The page in his grip was warm from the pressure. He checked the date on the entry. April 9th. He checked his watch. April 9th. Hatty had written this list today. This morning, maybe. A few hours ago at most. Cason went through every page above the entry, front and back, checking dates. He went through twice. Hatty's name did not appear anywhere north of Peck's Corner. Not in this register. Not as a sign-out. Not as a note. The entries above were from other hikers. Loose handwriting, exclamation points, sunrise descriptions, and then nothing. Hatty's list sat at the top of the written pages like a door that had been closed from the other side. He looked at the entry again. Item 3. If you hear footsteps behind you on a descent and you stop and the footsteps also stop, that is not an echo. Cason thought about the ridgeline approach, the lateral wind, the hand on the shoulder gusts, step after step, for 2 miles. He thought about how he had not stopped once on that approach. Not to rest. Not to check his map. Not for any reason. He had not stopped, so he had not tested it. His resupply was at Newfound Gap, 12 miles north, accessible by road. His food margin was down to approximately 1 day, calibrated as always with no slack built in. He needed to move tomorrow morning. The most direct route passed through Tri-Corner Knob Shelter. Item 1 was still at the top of the list. He read it again anyway. April 9th. He did not stop at Tri-Corner Knob. He did not slow down, did not look at the register, kept his eyes on the trail ahead and his pace at the high end of what his legs had left, and he was through the shelter clearing and back into the tree line in under 2 minutes. If item 1 had a reason behind it, he did not want to find it by stopping to look. By mid-afternoon, he was back at Peck's Corner Shelter, 12 miles from Newfound Gap. The plan was to eat, refill water, and push the final stretch before dark fell on the Smokies ridgeline. That was when he pulled out his phone. He did not entirely know why. He had 1 bar of signal, barely enough to load text, and he told himself it was to check the weather. But what he typed into the search bar was Garrett Hatty Colby Appalachian Trail. The page assembled itself in sections, slow and incomplete, the way pages load when the signal is almost gone. A forum. The Appalachian Trail Conservancy Community Board. A post dated 3 days ago from a username he didn't recognize. Has anyone seen a hiker named Garrett Hatty Colby, 24, northbound AT? Last known location, Peck's Corner Shelter, Great Smoky Mountains National Park, April 9th. Brown hair, gray osprey pack, approximately 6 feet. Family has not heard from him in 4 days. Please contact. Cason read it twice. Then he looked up from the screen. At the tree line across the shelter clearing, 60 yards, maybe 70, there was a man. He was standing at the edge of the spruce and yellow birch, pack on facing the shelter, completely still, not shifting weight, not looking at a map, just standing at the exact boundary where the trees started, watching. The pack was green, faded green, dark at the straps, the color deepened by the flat late-afternoon light filtering down through the canopy. The same shade as Cason's Osprey Atmos 65, leaning against the shelter wall behind him. Cason did not move. The man did not move. The smell hit him then. The same thing from Trey Mountain, faintly metallic and organic, something that had no business being on a cold April ridgeline in the Smokies. His chest was tight. His breath came shallow and audible in the enclosed shelter. Each exhale visible in the cooling air. The planks under his palms were rough, the grain of the wood pressing into his skin with a particular sharpness that the body catalogs automatically, without being asked. Because some part of the brain has already decided this moment will matter later. The light was going. The spruce trees at the man's back were losing their edges in the dusk, going dark from the inside out. The man did not move. Cason's eyes dropped to the hip belt of the man's pack, the left side, still catching what remained of the light. And he saw it. A long diagonal line across the hip belt, pale against the green, raw material showing through. The way nylon looks when something has scraped it down to the fiber. The same scratch, the same diagonal, the same hip belt. His own pack was 12 feet behind him. He did not turn to look at it. He already knew what he would see. Item 5. His pack changes color. He has done this the whole time. Not one person. The right pack, the right scratch, the right shade of faded green in fading light. Assembled the way you assemble a disguise when you are patient enough and have been watching long enough to get every detail exactly right. Cason's lungs were not working correctly. The cold had moved from his palms into his sternum, a deep, specific cold that had nothing to do with the temperature and everything to do with the knowledge that the man across that clearing had been close enough at some point to see the scratch on that hip belt. Close enough to copy it. His phone, still in his hand, dropped to no service. The screen went gray. The forum post disappeared. 1 bar, then none. He grabbed the pack, both hands on the hip belt buckles, cinched and locked in one motion, did not look up, moved for the far end of the shelter and the trail north. The gravel under his boots shifted and crunched with each step. He stopped. The footsteps behind him stopped at the exact same moment. He had not tested it on the ridgeline approach that morning because he had not stopped. He was stopped now. The result was the same as Hatty had written it: flat, specific, no room left for another explanation. That is not an echo. He ran. He made Newfound Gap trailhead in just under 4 hours. The distance should have taken 8. He did not remember the last 2 miles clearly, not because anything happened on them, but because somewhere around mile 10, his brain had stopped processing and handed the controls to something older and simpler that did not need to think. It just needed to keep moving forward. Ranger Delane Farr was on a routine evening patrol of the Newfound Gap parking area on US 441 when she found a 17-year-old hiker sitting on the tailgate of her truck. He had no recollection of sitting down on it. She took his statement with the engine running and the headlights on because the temperature had dropped 12 degrees since sundown, and he was shaking in a way that had stopped being about the cold an hour ago. She wrote everything down without interrupting. When she asked him to describe the man's face, Cason stopped. He went back through every instance, every sighting. Hatty's first, then all of them reconstructed in his own memory now, layered on top of each other. The tree line at Peck's Corner, the spruce and yellow birch at the clearing's edge. 60 yards of open ground and the man standing completely still at the boundary of it. He had never seen the face. Not once. Not for a single frame across 6 days and 168 miles. Always at distance, always stopped, always facing the right direction, but the face never resolving into anything he could hold on to. Ranger Farr let the silence sit. Then she asked one more question, quietly, her pen not moving. "What color did you say his pack was?" Cason told her. She wrote it down without looking up. 2 seconds. Then she closed the notebook and told him she was going to make a call. He sat on the tailgate and watched her walk to the far end of the parking lot, phone to her ear, her back to him. His mileage schedule was still in his front pocket. Day 8, Newfound Gap resupply. On time. He had been on time. He had made it. He was sitting in a lit parking lot with a ranger 30 feet away, and for the first time in 6 days, that felt like exactly the wrong kind of safe. The register at Plum Orchard Gap. Day 1. The entry that ended mid-sentence, dated April 2nd, 3 days before Cason had even reached that shelter. He had turned the page and noted it and kept moving. He had never gone back to it. Whoever wrote it was in Plum Orchard the same week Hatty passed through. The entry ended mid-sentence. No sign-out, no name, no record of any kind beyond the words that stopped. He started forming the sentence to tell Ranger Farr when she came back. He got most of the way through it, then stopped. In these mountains, some things are not worth finishing out loud. Garrett Hatty Colby was officially reported missing April 12, 2015. The search lasted 11 days and covered 43 trail miles in the Smokies backcountry. No physical evidence was recovered. His register entries remain in those shelters to this day, still in the logs, still readable, still signed in that same compressed, backward-leaning hand. The thing about the Appalachian Trail is that the registers are how you know someone was there. They are the proof. They are the record. Hatty left a record. The Pacer did not. And that, if you think about it long enough, is the part that should keep you up at night.